Good evening, 49er faithful. Here we are. It is Thursday night, December 29th, 2022. The Niners have played their last game of the 2022 year. It is on to 23, and they are riding an 8-game winning streak. Therefore, I'm smiling. My co-host Jack is smiling, and that means we are having a good show tonight. I'm Rob Schuh, your host, as always, on the Hammerhead Show, joined by my co-host Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Jack, are you enjoying these final days of 2022?
I am. We're kind of in between Christmas and New Year's part, right? So work's a little bit slows down a little bit, and tomorrow's Friday, so everybody's for the year, and looking forward to the weekend and just being able to relax and watch some football.
Yes, New Year's Eve, football on New Year's Day. I personally will be in the madhouse that is Las Vegas, Nevada. Very excited about that, and excited for the people that were here in the chat. Want to say thank you to those of you always participating. Raphael 5629er, Sneakerhead here on the channel, says, good evening, Rob, Jack, Sneakerheads, and everyone. Schnozzle, Shabizzle coming in, says, my left shoe and hammer toe, the all feet show. What up, Niner faithful? Alan Eliza coming in asking questions. He's a sneakerhead as well. He says, Jackhammer, Sneakerhead faithful, and everyone, Happy New Year and Friday Eve. Debo, the like button. Rob, when do you leave for Vegas? Will there be a call-in show this week? Yes, trying to do the call-in show from Las Vegas on Saturday. I leave tomorrow. Peter Lee coming in. Hello, Rob and Jack. Can't wait for the topics and content for today's show. Dak's turnovers making Cowgirls look awful right now. Man, that's some good news. You like to see the Cowboys struggling, Jack. Is it just me, or do you still take a lot of glee from that based on some of those rivalries of the 90s?
How about those Cowboys?
How about those Cowboys? Man, we got Darren Worthington in the house. Walker Utter coming in. Randall Riley, Sneakerhead, here on the channel, says, watching the scrubs for the Titans play a close game with the Cowgirls. John B., Sneakerhead, here on the channel. Rob, Jack, Cowboys looking very fraudulent tonight. I want to get into that. We'll have a topic on potential matchups for the 49ers going forward, but I do believe that there are two tiers that we're talking about. Randall Riley agrees, as does Darren Worthington. Devin Euros coming in. Rob, this team is steamrolling. I don't see us slowing down. Got the juggernaut vibe. Once he starts running, he can't be stopped. I like the X-Men reference there, Jack. And that leads us to our first super chat for us to bring in your voice, because I'm tired of reading these comments. It means it's just me. Chris Ray coming in. Finish the season strong and have a great postseason. That's not much of a topic to lead us off on here, Chris. No, I'm kidding. It's a great one. We do need to finish the season strong. We'll talk about that idea of winning out, and we'll get into the logic of it. But just as a quick hitter, Jack, with the two teams on the schedule, the Raiders and the Cardinals, prediction-wise, is it safe to say the Niners should win those two games? I don't think that's really breaking any big news here by asking that.
They should. They should, right? They should. They're the better team in both these matchups.
Yeah.
But as you were hearing, I haven't watched any of the Cowboys game tonight, but that's a game they should be winning handily as well. And I don't know what the score is over there, but it doesn't sound like that's what's happening. So anything can happen in the NFL. You slow up just a little bit because of something goofy happening with another team, and you find yourself in this situation now. Kyle Shanahan has done a pretty good job of not allowing that to happen with his team here, but. Yes, they should win out. They should be 13-4 when the season ends.
They should. All right, I want to talk about one of the main reasons for the winning streak as it stands right now, and certainly a contributor going forward if we are going to maintain this win streak. First, I want to say hello to the rest of the people in the chat. Lucas Pesci coming in. Luke Walsh, Joe Mitchell, Gohira Von Jinx, Schnozzle Shabizzle. I already called that one out, but I just like saying that one so many times. So many times, Jack. All right. You are my QB guru here, Jack. I come to you with these questions, and it feels relevant week in, week out. I know we've talked about Purdy before, and we're going to talk about Purdy again. But now that you've seen more tape on him, more and more game film on the young quarterback, give me your current evaluation of him as a complete quarterback. Take out of the equation that he is Mr. Irrelevant. Take out of the equation that he's our third string quarterback. What's your vibe on him just as a starting quarterback within the NFL?
He's operating the 49ers offense really well. He can hit all of the throws that the 49ers need him to make. And that's the biggest thing. Gets the ball out on time. Most of the time, he struggled a little bit with that the first week, but as he's gotten into the rhythm of playing the games, that's picked up for the most. Every once in a while, he still has a little whatever, but that's going to happen with every quarterback, right? They're not going to be perfect on every throw. Overall, I mean, it's hard to not like what he's doing. If you thought that Jimmy Garoppolo was playing good, then you need to think that Brock Purdy's playing good because their numbers are almost identical.
Is it surprising to you that a rookie is able to get the ball out on time so consistently?
Yeah, absolutely. The way that he's been able to come in and play, I didn't know a whole lot about Brock Purdy because I didn't study him coming out for the draft last year.
Right.
I know there's a lot of people that knew a lot more about him, pre-draft. But I think he's played at a really high level. I mean, I know people don't like talking about Mac Jones, but I was a big Mac Jones guy. And one of the things that I liked about Mac Jones was his ability to play from the pocket, his ability to get the ball out on time, put it on in the right spots, get it to the right guys, his ability to move around within the pocket and extend plays and still make plays with his legs here and there. The 49ers, instead of using the number 3 or 12 draft pick to get him, got that guy at 262. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me.
That's wild. Is it safe to say, with what you've seen so far, obviously a small sample size, but that he does move around in the pocket and have better escapability than Jimmy Garoppolo?
Oh yeah, for sure. That's where their difference is, right? There's a lot of things that he does that are similar to Jimmy Garoppolo from 2017 in terms of the throws and even the movement. But I think I've said this to you before, maybe I haven't, but I don't know when the last time was we've seen a 49ers quarterback that's had the kind of movement within the pocket, the escapability that he shows. It's been a long time since we've seen a guy that can move around the way that he does. And I'm not talking about somebody that's going to take off and sprint for 45 yards on the field. I'm talking about that little short area movement ability that is really important. And, guys like Trey Lance, even Colin Kaepernick were extremely fast guys, but they weren't necessary. If you watch Colin Kaepernick, he wasn't like the best mover within the pocket because he needed to build up his speed, right?
Yeah, it took him a while to get to top speed.
Yeah, and I think if you took Brock Purdy, we didn't get to see him. I think if you took Brock Purdy and you put Trey Lance next to each other and you asked them to run a 40-yard dash, I would think that I bet you that the Brock Purdy's 10-yard split might be as quick, if not quicker, than Trey Lance's. I think he has that burst to his game that really helps him move around like that. And we've seen it on the field in actual NFL games.
It really has shown up on tape. I mean, it's almost jumped off the tape. The way in which he seems to effortlessly move around within the pocket, almost assisting his offensive linemen in that regard, able to, with his head still downfield, sense those around him. I've been very impressed. I don't feel like you often see that from rookies unless it is a mobile quarterback and they're tucking the ball and just running. As a runner, that doesn't surprise me. The ability to both keep your eyes downfield and move around in the pocket in a controlled fashion, the way in which he does, I've been very impressed. By the way, we've got a new sneakerhead coming in. Got to celebrate that. Devin Euros coming in as the newest sneakerhead member. Want to say thank you to Devin. What concerns, if any, do you still have? Is there anything he has to prove to you at this point?
I think the only concern that you have with them is when you get into the big game, does he continue to play the same way that he's playing?
Right.
I mean, he's played in big games in terms of, he went up against Tom Brady and the Bucs teams. That was a big game at that point. He stepped into what everybody thought was a big game against Miami and played well. He played well on the road in the big game in Seattle. And he's showing it, but now can he do it when the playoffs hit and the spotlight changes a little bit? Does he just continue to play the game the same way? Because if he does, that bodes well for the 49ers. If he has any issues with it, that's when you get the only thing that worries me is all of a sudden he starts turning the ball over and these balls that are hitting DBs in the hands start getting caught.
Do you believe that as we get into the playoffs that NFL defenses will be better prepared for him and that those will be stiffer tests than he's had to this point, or will it just be the big stage that he has to overcome?
I think it's just a big stage that he has to overcome. You watch what he does. You can't typically when you try to just take one thing away from a quarterback or when you're watching film and you're saying, well, he can't throw the ball into this area, so you try to force him to throw the ball into that area, right? Well, he can throw the ball to every area of the field. you say if you're pressuring from this way, he's not going to be as good if he moves this way or the other way. Well, we've seen him move to his left and make good throws. We've seen him move to his right and make good throws. And it doesn't seem like he really cares which way he moves. It's not like, some quarterbacks, every time they get pressure, they want to bail out to the back. Like Russell Wilson, for example, every time he gets pressure, he wants to back out of the pocket, right? And that's not the case with Brock Purdy. He's not shown a consistent thing where you can say, we're just going to do this and we're going to stop him.
Yeah, we've seen him roll to each side. We've seen him climb the pocket, and we've seen him drop out the back end as well. Randall Riley, sneakerhead here on the channel, coming in saying, Rob, listening to other folks, all I hear is they need to see Purdy in the next game. The next game will be the defense or the team that will trip him up, a.k.a. figure him out. I'll keep waiting. Laugh my ass off. Randall has been on the Brock train for quite some time, and I respect that. I respect the fact that he jumped on before the first stop, and he's been riding it nonstop ever since. Do you believe that there's a concern with Purdy if NFL defenses were to take away the middle of the field, much like teams have tried to do with Jimmy Garoppolo, that would hem him up a bit? Or does he have a more live arm, and is he able to take advantage of that?
No, I don't think it's an issue. We've seen teams try to do some of those things to him already, and he still beats it or gets the ball in different areas. I mean, that's been something that people have said about Jimmy Garoppolo for years, going back to 2018, even probably, right? I mean, this is a long-term thing, yet he just continues to hit balls in that area. With Brock Purdy, he can throw those passes into those areas, but he can also throw the out route. He can also throw the ball deep beyond 20 yards, wherever you want to go. And those deep shots are usually coming within rhythm of the offense. I just think he's playing at a really high level. He has a lot of weapons around him to help him. And like I said, the only thing that's going to stop him is if he makes those bad throws, like against Seattle, right? The ball hits the guy right in the hands. He needs to catch it. The ball against Tampa Bay, I think it was, where it's a pick, and he gets a break on the penalty on the other side. So, if those don't go the 49ers' way, then that's when they're going to be in trouble. And I just worry that would happen in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And real quick, if I can too,
absolutely.
To what Randall said there, everybody just wants to wait for the next game. At some point, he's going to lose a game. And if it happens in the playoffs, what you're going to hear is I told you, because look, I've been telling you that his arm isn't strong enough. I've been telling you that he's not, an A1 quarter. You're going to hear it. And eventually, if you say something long enough, you're always going to be right if you just keep saying it. I used to say that about the 49ers back in the 80s and early 90s with some of the people that are still writing about the team back, but they'd be ripping on these are the days, and I was like, as long as you say the 49ers are going to suck, at some point, eventually you're going to be right. And at some point you're going to finally be right. It doesn't mean that you're right for saying it for the first 8 weeks when you're wrong, but finally all of a sudden you have your justification.
Yes. A broken clock is right twice a day, right? If you just stick to that time, eventually the circle will happen and you'll be proven right, but you're really not right in that instance to that point. All right, we've got a super chat coming in from Devin, our newest sneakerhead as well. Says, look at Brady and Rodgers. They don't sprint for 40 yards. They move around and extend plays. Then they deliver a great pass. They're both Hall of Fame quarterbacks. This is what Purdy does, and he will still grow. It does lead you to be optimistic within an offense that consistently can scheme players to get open. If you have a quarterback who's capable of moving around in the pocket, extending plays, but keeping his eyes downfield, that just seems to me a recipe for success. And it's easy to understand why Kyle Shanahan is excited by what he's seeing from the young guy.
Yeah. And what Devin is saying right here is right on board with the way that I feel about the quarterback position. Show me the guy show me the quarterback that's won a Super Bowl running around. You're not, because there isn't one. Right? Patrick Mahomes, I know he's an extremely athletic quarterback, but he beat the 49ers in that game with throws in the pocket.
Right. And you could take away his legs and he's still winning a bunch of games, right?
Absolutely. And that's the thing is, when we're looking, that's another reason I know people don't, I'm going to keep saying it because I know people don't like him. So I'm bringing up Mac Jones. And again, but that's my evaluation that people know me by. But that's what when we were looking at the draft last year, I said, if the best guy that's going to be in the 2021 draft, the guy that's going to get you to the Super Bowl is the guy that can make the plays from the pocket. And what we're seeing with Brock Purdy is a guy that can consistently make the plays in the pocket, and he has enough athleticism to make defenders miss. We've seen him do it repeatedly now. It's not like it's only done it once. He's done it on multiple occasions. And if you can make guys miss in the pocket, move around a little bit, that's what makes you deadly as a quarterback, especially if you can hit those throws when they're open.
Well, I got to say, I wasn't excited about the possibility of drafting Mac Jones, but when you made the case that you did, I felt your logic was incredibly strong, and you swayed me with that. I still wasn't excited because the product didn't feel exciting, but I got it. Like, I understood what you were driving at, and now we see when someone is able to execute in that way, just how pretty this offense can look, and that it doesn't require a huge, diverse set of skill talent to get that done, that you can operate within the scheme. You can be a less than stellar physical specimen, still a great quarterback, still capable of making all the throws, but not that kind of athlete that is a jaw dropper that gets you drafted in the first round. And now you're seeing it with Brock Purdy. It's very exciting. All right. I like what we've covered with Brock Purdy. Let's talk about winning. Jack, because the Niners have done a fair amount of it. 8 games in a row. So that equals the streak from 2019. A win against the Raiders would surpass that. 2 games left, a chance to end on a 2-game winning streak. How important is winning at this point? In your opinion, what's the difference between the 2 seed and the 3 seed?
Well, I want them to get the number 2 seed because I'd like to not have to travel for the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. That's my goal in them winning. So it's very important to me that they do it. But in terms of the 49ers' chances of getting to the Super Bowl with the 2 or the 3 seed, I don't think it really makes much of a difference. I think when you look at if they're the 3 seed, if everything goes according to the way that should go, right?
Yeah,
they would end up playing in the second round in Minnesota. Now, that's a matchup that I think favors the 49ers in a lot of ways. And the fact that it's indoors, so you don't have to worry about weather at all. It's not like last year going to Green Bay. I'm fine with it, but I want to see the 49ers get the number 2 seed because I'd like to go to Santa Clara for at least the first 2 rounds of the playoffs before having to get on a plane and go somewhere else if even it comes to that.
There's really something to the miles adding up, right? We are one of the furthest teams from everybody else. It doesn't matter where you have to go. If you're going on the road as the San Francisco 49ers, you're traveling. But the same is true for other teams coming to see us. And so it is an advantage to put them on that flight. It is an advantage not to put our players on that return flight afterward. Even if you do go into Minnesota, beat Minnesota, you're still logging those miles that end up traveling with you into that NFC Championship game. To your point, Jack, if you're staying at home, you're eating home-cooked meals, you're in the same routine, there's fewer chances for you to, pick up a freaking flu bug right before the next game. Like, there are many advantages, I believe, to staying home, emotional and physical advantages to being that 2 seed. Is there any... When you get into playing around with the playoff machine, you start moving around, this person loses here, this person wins there. Are there any matchups in that sequence that you become worried of in being the 2 seed? I know I'm stepping on a topic that we're going to get to in a little bit, but just if there are any that stand out to you that we could run into at the 2 or the 3 seed where we're more likely to play a fearful matchup.
The only one that kind of scares me a little bit would be if you're the 2 seed, because I think in order to get to the 2 seed, Green Bay wins this week against Minnesota, which I think would also vault Green Bay into that number 7 seed.
Right.
So Green Bay as a 7 seed scares me just a little bit because they're playing at a pretty good level right now, and they have, I think, the best quarterback of the teams that the Flyers might have to play in the first round. Their quarterback is the best. That's the only thing that worries me a little bit.
I can't decide if I want Minnesota to win or lose that game because knocking Rodgers out of the playoffs, it will bring a smile to my face. I mean, he still is lingering there with the I'm going to make the 49ers regret not drafting me, right? You know, much like the broken clock, if he finally beat the Niners in the playoffs when we have a juggernaut, he would be like, see, I told you you were going to regret it. I don't care that I lost 4 in a row to you. I finally got the last laugh. So we can't allow that to happen. I feel like you're right. That's a scary matchup in the 7th seed. Man, there are a couple out there that are. Okay, so if Minnesota wins out and we have that last game, I don't know if the timing actually turns out so that we play at the same time as Minnesota. I know that's often the case. The NFL likes to keep it such that teams don't know the outcome, so they don't rest players, so that fans watch every minute of football and that it's relevant football. But talking about the idea of potentially resting people for that last game versus the risks that come with resting players, what's your overall take on playing people, letting them go for records, or resting them and keeping them healthy?
I think that you play it out. The NFL, they have that flex scheduling stuff, and so if it comes down to it, where the 49ers and Vikings in week 18, I would expect them playing at the same time. I'd expect both teams to be starting at 1 o'clock or 1:25, whatever the time is that they start the game, so that they can't do that. I think they're going to try to get as many of the teams that are fighting for the playoffs into that afternoon slot as possible. The morning will be basically made up of the teams who are just playing out their schedule. That afternoon and Sunday night will be about the teams that are playing for the playoffs, so that they can't do any of that kind of stuff. So they have to go after it.
I like that. I do think that the NFL probably will lean into that, and it makes sense to me to go after it regardless. I think that George Kittle's onto something. Backing into the playoffs is never a good feeling. To lose a game, even if it's because you're resting players, it just sends the wrong vibe to the locker room. Coming in on a high note, being a hot team. I get that winning 10 in a row, the pressure actually starts to mount from a winning streak perspective, but I would rather have that than the negative energy that can come from an unexpected loss to a less than stellar division opponent.
Yeah, and I think Kyle Shanahan hit on it right on yesterday when he was talking and they were asking him about this, like, going into Arizona, that game, do you back off? And it's like, well, you've got to play 46 guys. You only have a 43-man roster, so that, I mean, who do I like the most as far as the guys that I'm not going to have available to me? And you look at their roster with Jimmy Garoppolo and some of these other guys that are injured that are on their roster still. It's like, who do you I would expect them, they go into that game, they play their starters, they get up by a couple scores, and you see like what you saw last week where the 49ers backups were on the field early in that game against Washington. There was a point early in that game where it was the entire backup defensive line. And we're talking about early on in the game. And they were giving guys rest throughout the game on that side of the ball. But and at the same time, Brock Purdy's a young guy. He needs to get as many snaps and as many look at things as possible. I just don't think you have that whatever where you can just roll into it. And look at what happened to the Rams back in 2017, right? They knew they were gonna have to play a wild card weekend. So they took off week 17. They got smoked in the first round of the playoffs. So Kyle Shanahan talked about that with his dad's experience. You just play the games. You just play the games. Injuries are a part of it. And if you're smart about the way you use your guys in those games, you should be fine.
Injuries are absolutely a part of it. We're going to touch on that right next. Peter Lee talking that same stuff you are, Jack, man. I remember the Rams rested their starters back in 2017. Then they clinched the NFC when they clinched the NFC West. And that next week they lost to the Falcons at home in the wild card round. And I do agree. Randall Riley talking about, Kyle's talked about this, already addressed the resting of players. He said it wasn't happening. He's going for the wins. Schnozzle Shabizzle's pointing out, hey, some Dallas players dropping like flies. I never like to see that. I don't like to see it on any team, regardless of whether I root for them or not. But it is what I think is relevant for the 49ers at this point, with just how dominant this team feels to me personally. If the Niners stay healthy from here on out, in your opinion, should they be the favorites to win the Super Bowl?
they should be the favorites to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Saying that they should be the favorites to win it, I think it's a little bit of a stretch. If I was putting them up against the Chiefs right now, I would think the Chiefs should be the favorites.
Yeah.
Buffalo, with the amount of turnovers that they have over there, that might play a little bit in the 49ers' favor. So other than the Chiefs, I think it's the 49ers could possibly be the favorite to win the Super Bowl if they got there.
It feels critical to me that, that's the case, because it's just luck as to whether injuries happen. I know fans want to blame Kyle Shanahan for most of the injuries that befall the San Francisco 49ers, but the reality is that it's football and it's a violent sport. And I do think that we're due a little good luck. And so I don't think it's out of the question to view the Niners as riding a healthier wave into the playoffs. And when I look at this team, that feels like one of the only ways that they get knocked off track. And unfortunately, in years past, we have dealt with that. Even in this year, it's what brought us to the doorstep of Brock Purdy. But if fortune favors us in that regard, it's wild to say that with that third string quarterback, it does feel as if we should be the favorites against most of those teams. I do agree. Kansas City stands out. I might even say that Buffalo might edge us out in that one by just a little bit. But man, it feels right to say that the 49ers should win out in the NFC. Obviously, you got to take it 1 week at a time, but it feels good to be that talented roster that has everything in front of them, just have to seize it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the other thing is they're getting healthy, right? They've been getting healthy. Eric Armstead comes back against Miami, and we're seeing the impact that he's had. His numbers don't show it. When you look at like the tackles and sacks and quarterback hits numbers, those might not show big impact by Eric Armstead. But Jimmy Ward has 2 interceptions that are a direct result of pressure by Eric Armstead. The interception against Miami when the running back fell down, but Armstead is in Tagovailoa's face before the pick. And then last week, again, Armstead's right there in the face of whatever his name was, Heineke. And you get the third, pick of the season for Jimmy Ward. So, you're getting healthy. Deebo Samuel saw him in practice yesterday. He wasn't participating in practice. He was working out. And I was like, my gosh, that doesn't even, based off of the way that guy got taken off the field, I wouldn't have been expected to see him looking that good. He was back at practice today. So they're not only already getting healthy, but they're getting healthier even. And they even might have another backup quarterback that's going to come back at some point, depending on how deep this run goes.
It is a special story being written here. It's a special story no matter how this season turns out. I am the type that this season doesn't have to end in number 6 for me to appreciate just how much fun it has been. It's been fun to this point, and we haven't even gotten to the playoffs yet. So I am definitely going to appreciate that, have gratitude for that, and yet would really like to see number 6. All right, Devin comes in with this super chat. He's a sneakerhead here on the channel. He says, if the Eagles lose out and Minnesota loses 1 and the Niners win out, we get the number 1 seed. Is it still possible at the moment? It's absolutely possible. It seems improbable. The idea of the Eagles dropping the final 2 feels like the weakest link in that chain. Is that a fair statement for you as well, Jack? Do you think that it's likely the Niners win out? It feels likely that the Vikings drop one of the next 2 tough ones against division opponents, but the Eagles are getting Jalen Hurts back, and I would think are going to win one of these final 2.
I just got to say, Rob, you got some really smart viewers on your channel, because Devin here, this is a sharp comment. I mean, I'd say that I've been saying the same thing. I actually started mentioning this after the game on Saturday, that this is there. It's there. Or actually, it was before Saturday's game when there's still 3 games left. When it was right after Jalen Hurts went down, I said, hey, the 49ers, I looked at the records and everything, and I'm like, hey, the 49ers still have a chance of winning this thing. They just need to win out. Exactly what he said. And I can see it happening. You look at it, this is a tough game coming up for the Eagles, I think, against New Orleans. Hey, I know the Eagles are playing both games at home. Crazy things have happened. I remember being at the season after the loss to Denver saying that the 49ers, talking about some historical 49ers teams that had really bad games, and that people should just kind of relax and see how this thing plays out. And people were telling me I'm crazy. I think Devin's comments on here. Of course, it's a little bit of a long shot, but hey, anything's possible. I think the odds of it happening are better than whatever the lady is that told the late Christmas, whatever that percentage was. I think it's better than that.
Better than those 1 in a million odds.
Exactly.
I love it. I mean, I will say that on this program, I believe we did our run through talking about, Nostradamus type predictions. I'm pretty sure that you landed at 13-4 when we did our schedule predictions way too early on this program. And it's looking like that's going to be a correct one. Now, things probably have gone a little bit differently than you would have guessed that they would have before the season started, but I still think that's worth noting. And Randall Riley agrees. He says, hey, man, New Orleans is needing to win to make the playoffs. So, yeah, they are going to bring it against Philly. And then you get down to just one game, and that can absolutely go either way. All right, I want to pick your brain about these potential matchups that we may have in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. First question I have for you is, will this team struggle yet again if they come across a well-balanced team or one that has one of the all-star quarterbacks, one of those top 3 in the league, acknowledging that most teams struggle when they come up against one of those quarterbacks? But will it look like what it did back in October?
Yeah, I think it could. I think that the one thing that I point to say no, that they might be in a better spot now, is that when they got blown out against Kansas City, the 49ers were a little bit beat up at that point. Jimmy Ward that was his first game back after, he had come back for a couple of snaps against Carolina, re-hurt himself. And so that was his first game back. Tarvarius Ward was dealing with a hamstring issue that he had suffered the week before in Atlanta. Nick Bosa was coming back after missing a game and a half. And so it was kind of just a confluence of events right there. I think the 49ers defense is really sharp. And I think that you look at the quarterbacks that they're going to face, and for the most part, I think that they can handle all these guys that they're going to face in the NFC playoffs. I think they can do something against all those guys. A little bit more nervous about Patrick Mahomes, even though I just said what I said. Mahomes and Allen, I think, are probably the two trickiest. And then to your point, as far as the balance, that's where a team like Dallas, with their balance that they can bring at them, and even Philadelphia, could make it for a difficult matchup.
If we're breaking the NFC teams down into tiers, would you say that Dallas and Philly are in tier 1, or do you separate out Philly above the rest of the competition?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted your top 3 teams in the NFC are I think are the 49ers, the Cowboys, and the Eagles. I think that's your top 3. And then it's pretty much just a cluster of teams that are all kind of similar, and which one makes a play here or there, or that kind of thing. Does one team get hot? You get below those top 3, man, other than Aaron Rodgers, the quarterbacks are Yeah, I got to say, the Packers and the Lions, both, they make me nervous from the heat that's coming out of the buildings, right? I mean, they are both cooking a little bit. We'll see how they both finish the season. They both appear to be stronger than their record would indicate. And that matters. When you get into the dance, it's how you're dancing at that moment that really does matter, not your overall record. Just ask the undefeated New England Patriots about that one. It comes down to how you perform in the game. That's for sure. If you look at the AFC, obviously Kansas City, Buffalo, very tough as opponents. Is there anyone else that you look at there as being fearful of? Do you put, people are throwing around their Bengals because of their ability to match up well against the Chiefs as a potential team that could climb into the Super Bowl again this year? Do any of the other AFC teams make you nervous? The Chiefs would be a team, not the Chiefs, but the Bengals would be a tough matchup for the 49ers. I think they have a good quarterback. They have a couple of really good wide receivers. They have a pretty good running back there, running game there as well. So they could be another one of those teams that could be a tough matchup for the 49ers.
That absolutely. All of these are exciting to me because each one feels like a team that we could beat. We have the recipe within our building to absolutely beat anyone that we come up against. Now, I'm not going to say that we'll beat them every single Sunday, but if the NFL played a 7-game series instead of one and done, I think the Niners would almost be guaranteed to win it all, right? Then injuries would really come into play if that were the case. But let's talk about a quick hitter here, Jack. I got a question for you. I want to know your thoughts on Bosa breaking records. My dude is sitting there at 17 and a half. I just want to know, what does your gut say? Does he break, number one, does he break Aldon Smith's record? So he's at 17 and a half, 2 games remaining. Aldon Smith sitting there at 19 and a half. What does your gut say?
My gut says, that he'll get 2 sacks, at least more than 2 sacks in these next 2 games.
I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like almost a foregone conclusion. He has gotten a sack in almost every game that he has played in its entirety. I think there was one exception to that rule. He's talking about how excited he is to be going for records like that. It's, it would just be nice. If you're Nick Bosa, it'd be nice to sit there with your name on the ledger that says, yeah, you are the sack leader for this storied franchise. I'm with you. I think he gets there. I believe, as you said, he gets more than those 2 sacks, which would have him hitting the 20 mark that I called out as a way too early prediction for Nick Bosa. I'm going to be thrilled if that does happen. Does he have any chance at climbing up to 22 and a half and tying or beating Michael Strahan's record? That would require 5 sacks or more in 2 games.
That one's a little bit more. That's going to definitely be more of a stretch. To get 6 sacks in the next 2 weeks, I think that's a stretch, even with the teams that he's playing against. So I would say no, he's not going to get 6 sacks in those 2 games. I could see him getting to close to 20. I might even see him getting to 22 and a half. I just have a hard time seeing him get 6. Just be 3 and 3. That's really tough in the NFL.
That's back-to-back amazing weeks. I mean, I will say, like, one thing that helps him is what the Raiders are doing here in starting Jarrett Stidham, right? It is absolutely, it's got to help. If Derek Carr were back there, I would anticipate he would get the ball out on time a little bit more. Should the Niners worry about Jarrett Stidham? What do you know about Jarrett Stidham, Jack?
What do I know about Jarrett Stidham? All I know about Jarrett Stidham was that in 2020, the New England Patriots were going into that season. That was going to be year 2 for Stidham in the NFL, and the Patriots went into that season saying that they were fine with Jarrett Stidham being their starting quarterback. Jarrett Stidham's going to be our starting quarterback. Jarrett Stidham's going to be our starting quarterback, and then their starting quarterback was Cam Newton. And now he's a Las Vegas Raider. There's not a whole lot out there on him. He's only thrown the ball, 61 times in his career, 32 completions, 2 touchdowns, 4 picks. There's not a lot out there on him. I don't think he's going to be, the only thing that worries you is because the fact that you don't have any film on him. So does he come out there and do something that you're not expecting because you don't know what he can do?
That's kind of the unknown of a quarterback that you don't have tape on. I do like the touchdown to interception ratio there. I feel like that bodes well for the Niners. And I do think Bosa goes crazy. I'm going to bring in some of the comments, people reacting to Nick Bosa. Nikki D says, if he gets 3 or so sacks this Sunday, how long do you play him versus Arizona to give him a chance to break the record? So it doesn't seem out of the question for him to get 3 sacks against Stidham, right? I mean, you got a guy who only has fewer than 100 attempts in the NFL. He could have a meltdown. It's possible. You could see that happening. If he does, I feel like you've got to give him the entire game. That kind of a record-breaking stat to own the sack record in the NFL, I think is a huge driver for players like Nick Bosa who believe themselves to be capable of being the best. I think you'd have to leave him in for most of the game against Arizona.
Yeah, you only get so many chances to do something like that, right? I think if it would be similar to last week. Okay, so last week Nick Bosa played 55 snaps. That was 75% of the snaps. Samson Ebukam 67%, Eric Armstead 67%, Charles Omenihu only 48%, and then so on and so forth. I could see that happening again. That makes sense. That's you letting your guys stay sharp, but at the same time giving them rest, letting them. I mean, if you look back to some of the other games earlier in the year, when they were still fighting to get to the NFC Championship and get themselves back into that spot, that you saw, Bosa playing almost the whole game. And those numbers were much closer to into the 90s. So I think that's the direction that you'll see them take with Nick Bosa this week. I think they do it again next week, regardless if he's chasing the sack record, to be honest with you.
getting him down to a more manageable percentage of the snaps. It seems prudent, and he can be more efficient with those snaps that he's in, right? The more snaps you're out there, the less gas you have for each one of those. If you hold back a little bit, maybe it keeps him just that little bit fresher. I like Gohira coming in with this comment. He says, what do I know? His name is Jarrett Stidham. Only because I Googled it. Yeah, that's about where most of us are with Stidham. This one's making the rounds. Randall saying, I know Stidham is dealing with insomnia this week, laughing my ass off. People referencing, yes, it is because of Nick Bosa that he cannot sleep. And I like John's comment, Sneakerhead here on the channel. Hey, Aldon Smith was able to get 5 sacks in a single game, and Bosa may be more talented. Anything is possible. That's a fair statement. Again, especially bringing in a backup who has very little experience against clearly the number 1 defense in the NFL. You could see that type of a meltdown game wherein you have multiple picks or multiple sacks. And hey, Bosa, you would think would be one of those that'd be likely to. Kevin thinks that, hey, Jack's face, it's not unrealistic to get 3 sacks. Is Kevin right about this? Do you believe it's possible he gets 3 in this one coming up?
Again, it's not unrealistic that he gets 3. It's not totally unrealistic that he gets 5. I mean, I agree with what everybody's saying. He is the best pass rusher the Flyers have had since Aldon Smith. I think he's a better all-around player than Aldon Smith was. His run defense I think is better and stuff like that. But it's not unrealistic. I just don't know. I mean, like when Aldon Smith got 5 sacks, I believe that was against the Chicago Bears. I believe it was. I don't know if either of these teams have an offensive lineman as bad as the Bears had that year. So that's the only thing. But yes, it is. You're saying there's a chance, and absolutely, you got to say there's a chance.
People want to take it even further here. FEMA camp etiquette for dummies says, hell, Bosa could get double-digit figures in sacks against the Cardinals. We may be stretching it beyond. We have jumped the shark, Jack. We have jumped the shark, so to speak. All right. Is Derek Carr a distraction for the Raiders? Do you think that the demotion of Derek Carr, these rumors that he's stepped away from the team, is that going to further distract a team that is already having an unexpectedly bad season?
You would think that's one way to look at it. You would think that the fact you would think so. What is it about Derek Carr where the Raiders feel the need to get rid of him and not even allow him to show up in the facility and work with, even talk to Jarrett Stidham, be in the building? Why can't he even be in the building? Like if that's the Raiders that made that choice, or if it was him that made that choice, who knows, right? That's wild. And Derek Carr has been a kind of a goofball anyway when it comes to some of the things that he said in the media. So the guy's from Bakersfield. He talks like he's from Texas.
And he does. I mean, it has been an emotional year for him. Very clearly, that came out in one of his earlier pressers this season. And it just strikes me as, he's well liked on the team. That's very clear. Devontae Adams says, hey, I came over as from Green Bay because of Derek Carr being here. It feels like a strange situation. Makes me wonder about Josh McDaniel. I go back to the way in which he didn't vibe with players in Denver. You wonder if a move like this is the beginning of a meltdown. It just has that odd vibe about it, right? Of just unexplained behavior within the clubhouse. Someone that should be treated well, that even if you're moving on, you move on with respect because he's been there. He's suffered through bad defense after bad defense and has kept his head up. And yet it does feel as if this is an awkward, messy breakup that's happening.
It definitely is. It's definitely an awkward, messy breakup that we're seeing. He's not playing because he's not going to be a member of the Raiders next year. That's what all this points to. He's going to be playing for somebody else. They don't want to get stuck with him like what happened with the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo. So they're going to just go ahead and send him home and never, don't let the door hit you on the way out, basically. And I agree with you. Like, Devontae Adams says the only reason he's there is to play with Derek Carr. Well, you're not going to show up on Sunday? I mean, is that what you're going to decide to do? Or are you going to, I doubt it. I think you're going to be a professional and show up and play the game, and can he be a distraction? I think it's one of those things where the Flyers go out there and they just blow it up. That's what everybody's going to say, was that it had something to do with Derek Carr. Could just be that the Flyers are a better team.
Right. Entirely possible. Is there going to be a market for Derek Carr?
Absolutely. There's bad quarterback play all over the NFL, so somebody's going to take him.
It's wild to me when a team essentially gives up on someone that is better than a fair number of bad quarterbacks that are out there. And they're like, nah, we're going to try it again. We're going to go back to the well. We're going to find somebody this time. We didn't last time, but we will. We'll hit it in the draft. All right. Talk to me about the Raiders here, Jack. Number one, is this a potential trap game for the Niners? But what are the keys to victory? What do we have to do other than showing up in Las Vegas on January 1, 2023?
Well, again, the way that it's a trap game is, kind of like what we were just talking about earlier with the Cowboys and the Titans, right? Titans have a bunch of their top guys are out, and you have the Cowboys struggling because they're turning the ball over and they're not playing well. So if the Flyers overlook this Las Vegas team, it's really easy to see the Raiders maybe jump on them. You look at, one of the things that the Flyers do such a good job of is stopping the run. They haven't allowed a running back to go over 59 yards against them all season.
Right.
Well, the Raiders have a running back that's done that in 12 of 15 games this season. It's not like Josh Jacobs has only done it once or twice.
Right.
Recently he's done it. He's done it like 7 of the last 8 games and 12 out of 15 this season. So I think that you get that running game going, and if they can run the ball, that might make things a little bit easier for Jarrett Stidham not to have to be the guy. So how good the Flyers are on first and second down. That's what was a big thing I talked about last week against Washington. I think that really plays into it, because especially this week, right? Last week they were playing against a guy who was a functional quarterback. If they can shut this running game down and put Jarrett Stidham into the 3rd and 6s and 3rd and longs like they did with Taylor Heineke in the first half last week, I think this game's over with at halftime possibly.
This does feel like one of those games that could go one of two ways. One in which the Raiders are able to run the ball effectively, and in doing so, they're able to keep this game close. Otherwise, I feel like it's a very similar recipe for the 49ers, that the first half feels a little bit closer, but we really beat up on these teams. We get our run game going, and in the second half, our defense just freaking lowers the clamps on the opposing offense, and we see these games tend to go in the 49ers direction. I could see that happening with Las Vegas. But to your point, it would seem that Las Vegas is going to come out and try and get that run game going. And I would think that the 49ers' primary objective on defense is to stuff Josh Jacobs, that he would be the guy I've got my eye on first and foremost, obviously keeping a side glance on Davante Adams, but I'm not expecting Stidham to be able to throw it all over the yard. I would think the Raiders come in with that attack of, hey, we're going to possess the ball, control time of possession, and run it down their throats. It's just a question of whether the 49ers defense can be the stronger of the two, or Josh Jacobs continues his stellar season.
Yeah, it's all about stopping Jacobs. If you look, because the Raiders really don't have a second running back either. It's pretty much Josh Jacobs and Gino Hammer-Schmidt after him. So I don't know if anybody got that, but you look at it and it plays well into the 49ers' hands this game because of the matchup with the Raiders. Not having their quarterback changes this, because if Derek Carr was here, I'd probably be telling you, don't be shocked if the 49ers are behind at some point early in this game by 10 or 17 points. Because that's what the Raiders have done to teams this season, and then they've gone and fallen apart all over themselves. So with Jarrett Stidham, though, and the history that we've seen of him, I think this all favors the 49ers.
I do as well, and I'm loving some of the comments. Nikki D coming in on 3rd down, that is, drop your 7, let Bosa and company up front do their thing. So he was saying take away Jacobs in early downs, drop 7, let the down 4 wreck Las Vegas's game plans. John B says, Rob, Mooney Ward on Davante Adams and stack that box to contain Jacobs. Not worried about the rest. Schnozzle Shabizzle just paying you compliments. That was good, Jack. It's always good, Jack. That is true. Okay, so talked about how the 49ers defense is probably going to be going after Jacobs. What do you think is the key for the 49ers offense going against the Raiders? Is it continue to be balanced? Do you think somebody stands out as the most important player in this matchup?
Yeah, I think the passing game for the 49ers kind of rules the day here. The Raiders come into this game, they're 26th in the league in net yards per pass attempt. That's one of the worst teams the 49ers have faced in a while. It's definitely the worst in terms of what the 49ers have faced with Brock Purdy. So I would expect to see him continue to do what he's been doing as long as they just do what they've been doing on offense. I think the 49ers go out there and put up a good 24, 30 points on the Raiders, depending on field position, right? It's hard to have it's hard to really score more than 30 points in the NFL unless you get some help by field position. So I think that's the key to this game. Just go out and do what you do. Let Brock Purdy work. Try to get that run game going a little bit, and I think the 49ers can put up around 30 in this one.
And you could see advantageous field position happening with that quarterback back there for the Raiders. I would expect some turnovers. You might see a sack fumble in this one. Oftentimes, those less prepared quarterbacks against stellar defenses just face an uphill battle all day. All right, we are wrapping this thing up. For those of you that are here, do me that favor. Hit the like button if you enjoy the content. Subscribe to the channel, and all of Jack's information is down below. I called out earlier. He is the representative there for the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. The website for the blog is down there. Follow that link. Bookmark it. His YouTube page is there. You should be subscribed. You should hit that bell notification, and you should definitely follow him on Twitter until that company burns to the ground, as Elon Musk is apparently trying to do. This has been a phenomenal show. Jack, do you think that this is going to be a close one against the Raiders, or as you predicted with the Niners offense potentially putting up some points and having the number one defense, could we see a comfortable victory?
The only way I see this one being close is if the 49ers make it close, right? By screwing up with turnovers or
shooting themselves in the foot.
Or not taking points early on in the game like they did last week. Those kind of things. If you allow these guys to hang around, that's the only way that I see that this is being close. The Flyers come out here and play up to their potential. I think a score somewhere along the lines of 27 to 14 sounds about right, or 27 to 10 maybe. Here's the thing. The only thing that if you're wanting to be concerned, or you're looking at some possibility of the Raiders playing well, is that they know, at least Josh McDaniels, he knows a little bit there about the quarterback that they're going with, a Stidham, right? Because they were together in New England in 19 and 20. So it's not like he's going to a quarterback that he doesn't know anything about. So there's a little bit of history there between the two of them. But again, with this 49ers defense, and I've talked about it a lot, you look at that matchup up from the quarterback on the other side of the ball, and this is a really tall test for Jared Stidham.
Yes, it really is. I'm excited about this one. Very excited to be heading out to Las Vegas as well. It has been a while since I've been at a game. Want to bring in Mark Hicks here, my good friend. He says, Rob, Niners looking purty these days. Congrats, my man. Mark, really appreciate it. Absolutely do. I'm thrilled. Excited for what we've done so far. Very excited for what is still to come. Excited for Vegas. The FEMA camp etiquette says the over-under is 41. I'd take the over. I am too. I mean, I think that the Niners, I like your score prediction there. I think it's closer to 45 or 48 that gets put up between these two teams. I may have to lay down a wager. It is in Vegas after all, Jack.
Yeah, you're right there. You might as well go drop some money somewhere, right?
Might as well. A6 saying stay safe in Vegas, Rob. I will try. It is going to be New Year's Eve. It's going to be just mayhem. I'm going to try to do some shows from there, try to do some live streams. That should be fun. Maybe even walking down the strip. Maybe I can get some of the Niner fans in the shot. Hopefully it is a red takeover. I'm very excited about it, Jack. This has been a phenomenal show. I'm so thrilled that you were able to join me yet again. Do you have some things coming up on the channel?
Well, I'll be doing tomorrow. I'll be doing a joint show with Rohan. We do a cast on both of our channels, so choose my channel. No, I'm just kidding. But so I'll be doing the simulcast with him tomorrow, and then I'll be doing, obviously New Year's Day. I'll wake up at some point before the game starts, do a pregame show for you guys, and I'll do a postgame afterwards. Those are the ones that I need people to really tune into. I don't get, no, it doesn't seem like people want to get jazzed up for the games with me. So tune into that game on Saturday morning around 10:30. Make sure you tune into the channel. We'll do a pregame show, answer your questions. I always go through some of my own stuff, but I always love answering. My favorite part of doing this is when I'm talking by myself, especially when I'm doing a show by myself, is when I get a bunch of questions in the comment section, because that's what makes me, that's what, I can only talk to myself for so long.
I mean, longer than most people. You and I are practiced at it. We've just been staring into a camera, talking to ourselves for quite some time. You get better at it. It's pretty remarkable. But yes, those questions are freaking money. When you get that engagement from the chat, I just love it. To me, that's what this community is all about. And the folks that are here in the chat tonight want to say thanks. Jack, I'm thrilled to have done the show. I look forward to doing one on your channel coming up in the near future. And I will try to stay safe in Vegas and bring us home a W with, what I can do, bringing my spirit.
Yeah, I want to see you walking down the strip with a selfie stick talking about 49ers football. That's what I want to see with all the people around you. I think that would be fantastic footage. That's what I'm
New Year's Eve. Everyone else is just shit-faced, and I'm here talking Niners.
Well, you could be that way too if you want. It'd be fantastic. It would be. I just want to see you walking the strip, talking to yourself in camera with all these people around you. I think it'd be fantastic. And then also get over to FlyerSdemocrat.com. Get over to the Inside the Flyers blog though, because today I put up an article that everybody needs to check out, because I don't know if you know it, but Brock Purdy and Trey Lance, our good pal Jesse, right? He was putting out the numbers for the two. And it just so happens that Brock Purdy and Trey Lance, I don't know if you know this, they've both played 262 snaps as quarterbacks of the San Francisco 49ers at this time. So if you check out the Press Democrat, you can actually see what their numbers are for 262 snaps of their NFL career. It's never going to happen again, at least not for a while. So go check it out. It's quite interesting. I posted those numbers on Twitter earlier today without any.
I saw those,
and people were quite lively. So go check it out.
Yeah, it starts a little bit of a dialogue there, Jack. Get over to the Press Democrat. Be a part of the chat in there. Let's get that cranking. I love it. You're starting dialogues here, there, and everywhere. By the way, I also, the chat loved it, but I also loved your Josh Jacobs, Jingleheimer Schmidt reference earlier. You were on point tonight, Jack, as always. All right, I'm going to get going. I will be off to Vegas tomorrow. Look on Twitter on my page to get some updates on when the next live is. Be sure to check it out, though, because there will be some lives from Vegas. I'll try to get some of the other YouTube streamers that are there to come on to a live with me. So it should be a lot of fun. But you guys know the drill. Until next time, cheers, Niner faithful.